Hey guys, welcome back. This is, of course, the Animator Guild podcast, a podcast for aspiring animators and artists where we talk about the creative process, respond to audience questions, and expand on ideas which can't fit into short YouTube videos. And also remember that the podcast is now up on Spotify and SoundCloud and will soon be coming to other platforms. Today I'll be talking about maintaining optimism in the face of challenges. By the end of this podcast, you should be revitalized with new optimism and hopefully be inspired to make some animations. This episode was prompted by a message I received from a user called Shan on the Animator Guild Discord group. He writes, "Hey Howard, how are you able to maintain your optimism when it comes to animation? Because yes, it might not be a dying thing. It's been looked down upon heavily though. When we look at animation studios, their monthly pay isn't usually that great, and they aren't able to create their own thing. When we look at YouTube, they don't want to promote your content because animators aren't able to maintain for so long." I think he means runtime there. And YouTube picks quantity over quality. Yeah. Even when you have people supporting you on Patreon to help you keep going, how will you be able to know it will be enough to invest on your own studio? And how will you keep the budget in check so that people who help with your project get paid? By the government, he says in question mark. I don't know a lot of things in the world since I'm very young, but doesn't it upset you of what animators have to face? And sure, it's not all about money, but to be able to function in this society and make your idea happen, it's only done by money." Okay, end letter. That's the sort of, well, not a letter, but that was the message I received from Shan. So very pessimistic, sounds very down, sounds like he's pretty overwhelmed by letting the pessimism get to him. And I think many of my subscribers can probably relate to this feeling, especially since the news of copper came out, which had a lot of people shook. Well, luckily this sort of question is my specialty, I think, because I have a very buoyant, optimistic outlook on my situation and on animation in general. So I think that perhaps that's needed to turn this attitude around and to give you a better outlook where and the other thing is that if you have this pessimistic point of view, it makes you less capable. It actually really limits you. Whereas if you're feeling good about the situation, then you start to see opportunities everywhere and you start to function better and you produce better work. Your situation improves, and this has been proven time and time again from studies in psychology and sociology. So it's important that we change this, we turn it around and get you feeling good about the situation, because there's a lot. We're actually very lucky. We have a lot of opportunities, and I just need to make you see that. So I'm going to address each of your main points and give you my response to them. Hopefully by the end you will have a different outlook on the situation. Before I get into it, I just want to remind you about the Animator Guild Patreon page. If you appreciate these podcasts and videos and you want to give something back, you can show your appreciation by pledging a regular amount of your choosing to go directly towards maintaining the channel every fortnight. It can be as little as $1, and it all adds up to really help. The link to that is in the description below. The first major point I want to make about your collection of questions is that animation is not the only industry with problems. Literally every industry has problems, and you just need to learn a little about the other industries to realize this. Like, let's pick some of the ones that come to mind where people believe them to be very abundant industries with tons of money coming through, loads of cash flow, easy money, and a cushy lifestyle. So let's pick the oil trade. So people are now realizing that oil is not sustainable for the planet. Governments are increasing taxes on non-renewable energy sources. Oil is a finite resource, so in the near future there won't be any oil left. So how's that for an easy, stable industry? And that's one that people often cite as being, a very lucrative industry, but it's got serious problems at the root of it. Let's take another one, stock trading. Maybe people imagine someone with their feet up on a desk watching their stock portfolio go up and up. But let's look at the reality of some of this. High reward trades come at a higher risk. So for every successful trader you hear about, there are 100 traders who have lost a fortune in the stock market. In order for you to stock trade as a full-time career, you need to spend about 8 hours a day staring at candlestick charts and reading the Financial Times from cover to cover. So how's that for an easy industry? It's not actually what it's cracked up to be like. And, I could go on and on, being a doctor. Good luck at getting through medical school for being a doctor. You think that's easy? To think that's a walk in a park? 7 years in medical school, the entire time of which you're not earning money. So you come out of medical school in heaps of debt. You see, I can find flaws in any industry, even the industries that you think are the most lucrative, the most stable, the most easy to get along in. Animation is not special. It has problems. And every now and then something shakes it, and everyone who makes animations gets scared and hunkers down or quits instead of taking advantage of the opportunities, the real opportunities that are out there. And I think that comes from thinking differently, not just thinking like the average person. Here's one that wasn't asked directly by your question, but it's one that I hear a lot of, and so I'm going to address it. This idea that animation is a small industry. When you think about it, the size of the industry has no implication on the prosperity of the people working in that industry. The larger the industry, the higher the competition, for one thing. So what if Hollywood produces far fewer animated features than live action films? There are far fewer people who can draw well. So people who can draw well and reliably are in huge demand. The size of the industry is pretty irrelevant at that point. It's all about the size of the industry. It's all about the supply and demand of the industry, the balance that goes on there. Are there enough competent artists compared to the demand that studios and individuals have for those competent artists? I would argue no, not enough competent ones. And how do I know this? Because I actively look for artists to hire all the time for my productions, and it is hard to find 2D artists with animation experience who are reliable and reasonably priced. Once I find an artist like that, I stay in contact with them because they can be hard to find again. If I lose that contact, then I have to search all over again, and it can be a long time. So, there aren't enough of them, really, from my perspective. And a lot of the time as well, if you're a client who's just looking for a freelancer to work on an animation, most of the talent is snapped up by studios. Like the talent goes straight into these big studios, like Bungie or The Mill or something. I mean that's VFX, but they don't stick around in the freelance industry too long. So it can be actually very hard to find freelancers that way that actually know what they're doing. So anyway, I just wanted to clear that up, that just because animation is a small industry compared to live action film or 3D, it doesn't actually mean that your job prospects are any worse, really. And also, the TV industry is big on 2D animation, and so are a lot of other industries. So 2D animation is relied on a lot, and not just in 2D narrative animation. Okay, so just to hit that home, the world of animation is flourishing. I can tell you that firsthand from my flooded inbox of people constantly asking me to help on their music videos, Kickstarter projects, YouTube series, comic book adaptations, short films, feature films, game projects. The list goes on. Okay, now I've got those two perceptions out of the way, I'll actually directly address some of the points you've made in your message, Shan. So the idea that you need money to start making animations, I think you need hardly any money, especially when compared to live action film or anything like that. Here's what you need. If you want to go the budget route, you need a second-hand Wacom Bamboo tablet. You need a second-hand laptop. You need an internet connection and a power connection. And you need a free software like OpenTunes or Critter that can be downloaded from the internet for free. So that's actually not a cost. So if you can get these things, then you're away. And you have everything you need to make an animation from start to finish. The rest, and to put it online. The rest is just the time you've got to put in. And, everyone has time, really. Everyone has time as their resource that they can spend. You might not think you do, but you probably do. If you watch Netflix at night, if you play games, video games, you have time. You can sacrifice that time that you spend watching Netflix for actually making a film of your own. So what's the cost of that? Like, what's the minimum cost? I would say it's under £300. Under £300, which I think most people can save up to. And that's imagining that you don't have a laptop yet. So somehow you're listening to this on a mobile device perhaps, and you don't have a laptop, and you don't have an internet connection or a power connection, right? So £300 is like assuming you have nothing, but really it could be spending an extra £50. Oh, I realize some people won't know what pounds are. Dollars, it would be like, I don't know, the estimate I'd say for an average person would just be the cost of a bamboo tablet, really, second-hand bamboo tablet, which could be $20, $30. I haven't looked. The links to those products will be in the description of this. I'll make sure to link them so that you can go out and buy them if you want. Maybe not second-hand. I wouldn't link to one that's second-hand, but you can find one that's second-hand. Okay, this is plucking another point out of his message to me. When we look at YouTube, they don't want to promote your content because animators aren't able to maintain runtime, I guess he means, for so long, and YouTube picks quantity over quality. First point I want to make is, like, no matter what YouTube thinks is good, I would always recommend you strive for quality, because I think in the long run it's always worth investing in making quality content, no matter what the algorithm decides. Quality content is timeless. It will always be quality, whereas quantity, you get the idea. And we're living in an age where if you want quantity, we've got the internet for that. Anyway, moving on to the actual point. It's true that ad revenue is no longer an adequate source of revenue for animators, save for a select few at the top. So just treat ad revenue like an extra little bonus wage on top of the money you're making by other means. You should also remember that YouTube is free promotion. my videos have been seen by millions of people, and I've never paid YouTube anything to do that. They rank often in the top of search results for certain keywords. Never paid YouTube for that. YouTube runs ads on my videos and pays me a percentage of the money for that. So can I really complain? That's a bonus for me. It was never part of the plan to make that my full source of income, and I wouldn't recommend that for anyone. And so yeah, there is a sweet spot for content that's around 10-minute long videos. Enough for someone to squeeze into a lunch break, I guess. That's why it's around 10 minutes. But also, if you go longer than that, you actually find that the video gets punished as well. I've made half-hour long videos or even hour-long videos, and they don't get as many views. So it's actually, it's kind of around 10 minutes, which I understand is outside of the realm of animation. All that suggests, though, is that you shouldn't try to make full-time income from making animations on YouTube. That's all this fact shows. It doesn't show that animation is not worth pursuing, that animation can't be profitable. Okay, so that leaves 99% of ways for animators to make money still open to you. There are so many more options. If you want some clues, you can take a look at my channel and what I've been up to. I mean, for one thing, at the start of this video, I said, guys, you can directly sponsor me and my videos. You can directly help and pay towards them with Patreon. So now there's no middleman in between, really. Patreon is a middleman, but they only take a very small percentage. And most of it goes directly to me, which has helped me to do things like buy a new microphone so that you get this good audio quality on this podcast, and many other things, lights I've got now two studio lights to improve the quality of the YouTube videos. And so it all comes back round, and so you can do things that way instead of just ad revenue, which we all know doesn't pay enough. I make very little direct income from my short animations being on YouTube. If you look at my actual short films that I make, but that was never the plan. You see, you've got to be smart about it. It was never the plan for me to profit from my animated short films, my narratives. They are like a promotion tool. They give credibility to my name. They help me to get in contact with clients. Clients seek me out for my work because they see my short films. And also, okay, let's say you did want to make YouTube ad revenue your full-time thing. You just got to be smart about how you do that. You could integrate animation with live action footage that you shoot and save those bits of animation for key moments. You can document your process. I mean, that's what I do. I film my screen as I'm animating, and that becomes content for people to get something out of. A lot of people learn from just my screen recordings, I think, and seeing how I do things. You can make looping animation like those chill hop channels. Have you ever been on YouTube and listened to chill hop, lo-fi hip hop? They usually have animations they're just going round and round, looping round. Okay, so you might be listening to that video for an hour, listening to the soundtrack, and they've done maybe 5 seconds of animation for it. You see, it's just being smart about how you do it. Here's another clue. YouTube is the world's second largest search engine. So if you understand SEO, which is search engine optimization, and video editing, you can rank high in the world's second largest search engine for a huge range of topics. Use that to your advantage. So many of my clients find me through YouTube search bar. It's crazy how effective that is. And it's strange how rare it is for people to see YouTube in this way, because most people they all think the same way. They hear one person saying something about the state of YouTube and how it is, or the state of animation, and then they start to adopt that because they haven't thought outside the box themselves. They all think things like, oh, I've got to act like everyone else, make an animated series which picks up a following and then earn money from the ad revenue that I make on those videos. Or, I don't know, the other one, which isn't really YouTube related, was like, oh, I've got to pitch my idea for a series to Adult Swim, I don't know, and launch a studio with the funds they give me. I don't think these plans are very practical. They have a high failure rate and the system is not set up for them to succeed. So you need to be smart about how you use these free public resources. Think outside the box. Don't think like the masses. Okay, next point he makes is that basically it's hard to become a director or to make original content. So my mic drop answer for this is that you haven't earned it. The position of being a director in charge of other artists to make a large production show or films is a privileged position, and you need to earn it, otherwise you're not worthy. So, for example, getting the financial backing. In order to get financial backing and to work with other people or have other people work for you, you need to earn people's trust. And how do you earn people's trust? By making films on your own. That's how you earn people's trust. You won't get anywhere unless people trust that you can do the job. And they won't trust you unless they can see evidence for that. In order to be a good leader as well, especially on an animation production, you should have the knowledge and experience in the entire production. Only then will you be able to communicate properly with different professionals and departments and understand the animation process as a whole. That's very essential to being a leader on a creative project, is understanding other people's roles. So when you say that it's hard to become a director, you need to work your way up. And if you haven't worked your way up and you get there by some crazy coincidence, you haven't earned it. You don't deserve to be a director. So, being a director in many ways is great. In other ways, it's a very demanding task where you're responsible for an entire team. You've got to work your way up to that gradually over a career. So that's my point of view on it. And so it's like you're complaining that it's hard to become a director making original content. And I would say, yeah, it is. And it should be. You can't just have anyone being a director. All right, I think I've made that point clear. Let's move on. Okay, next little segment I lifted out of his. How will you be able to know it will be enough to invest in your own studio, and how will you keep the budget in check so the people who help with your project get paid? And in question mark he said, by the government. So government is one option, but not necessarily. So for this is a technical question, and it needs a technical answer, I guess. So he's kind of stepping a little bit too far, and is coming up against issues when it comes to funding studio projects and large projects. Okay, so first of all, I think it is good that you're mindful of wanting to be sustainable as a business and of ensuring that you can provide for the people you employ. I usually say leaders eat last. Like if you mess up with the budget or something, that should come out of your pay, not from your employees. So it's good that I can see that you have that mindset here. You're conscious of that You don't want to let your employees down, if you get any employees, that is. Basically, to answer this, the main overview is that you don't jump straight into production with a huge staff. You build up to that over a long period of time, if you're sensible. If you don't build up to it over a long period of time, let's say you win the lottery and you do it that way, or you get greenlit by producers somehow, then usually that falls apart very quickly and it makes no profit. There are plenty of blueprints for how to do this, like easing your way into animation production. And so I'll share with you a blueprint which is close to what I do. Step 1. Starting off, we make animations on our own, like I've already said. Very important stage. And an important supplement for this is to work on your social media game. So that not only do you make your own films, but you understand how to put them out there in front of the masses, get them noticed. Very important stage in this, and it's the first rung on the ladder towards getting that studio that you want and producing original content. Step 2, then we network. So your original films can help you do this. You can network for free on social media, like YouTube, like Twitter, Instagram, those kind of things. Meet people, meet artists, start up conversations with them. You're effectively a talent scout at this point. You save people's details for later when you might need them. So when you get the opportunity to hire them, you know who they are. I've built up quite large lists of animators, and it's got details on them, like what software they use, what their rates are or what their rates might be, links to their portfolios, things like that. So I've gathered loads of information. It takes work. You gotta actively scout for people and develop these networks and friendships. Step 3. So next, when you have independently made a film which is good enough, it has to be a quality independent film. By the way, if you can't yet make a quality independent film, you have to go back and relearn your skills, your core skills, so that your film can be good enough. Then you make the film and it will get traction and prospect clients. Trust me, if the film is good, it will get traction. Like, people will notice it. If it's not getting noticed, either your fundamental skills in animation and storytelling aren't there yet, or you haven't invested in your social media game. So where was I? Yeah. So when it is good enough, it will get traction and prospect clients will start coming along. Prospect clients meaning clients who are interested in hiring you but have not yet paid you anything. These are clients who they have an idea for a concept themselves and they want you to be the execution on that project. They want you to produce it for you. And I think this is a really good step towards making your own content. So from there, the great thing about this part, and this is in preparation for creating your own original content, from there, you get a budget from that client. You can negotiate with the client and you negotiate a budget, an overall budget. Let's say it's, just for this example, let's say it's $10,000. Then you have that number and you know that out of that number, certain things have to happen. Actually, what would happen is you do all this calculation before you send the quote. But let's just say you've got that number now, $10,000. Out of those $10,000, you've got to pay yourself. You've got to produce the film. The whole film has to be made from start to finish. and any expenses need to be covered, and you need to pay whoever you bring on. So I think for a low budget like $10,000, you should keep the team to a minimum, because the more people you bring on, the more of that pie is going to get sliced up and taken in different directions. So it makes it harder. So have a core team of generalists, really. It could be you and one other person. That's what I recommend. So step 4, then we go to hiring one animator online for part-time work or with a work-for-hire contract. A work-for-hire contract is a contract where you agree to pay the freelance artist for one specific task only. Let's say it's doing 50 background paintings. You set up a contract where you pay a certain amount for them to do those 50 backgrounds. Then when they've done the 50 backgrounds, you pay them, and then the artist is on their way. In fact, you probably do some kind of split. So you pay them some up front, some after. But then once it's done, and that artist can walk away and it's fine. You don't need to provide for them anymore. So it's not like the old days where you had to pay an annual salary straight out the gate. Now you've got the internet, you've got freelance animators, and that's how I suggest you start your studio. This is what it's been done for me, and that's brought the barrier to entry way lower. You can do most of the work yourself, and we're going back to the same thing, which is like you should be able to make a film by yourself. And the reason for that is, let's say this can happen. It happens quite a lot. The freelancer that you've hired drops out. Well, if you can make the film yourself from start to finish, then you are like your own insurance policy. Like, you know that if everything goes wrong, the freelancer drops out, maybe he's got health problems or something, then you can pick up the stylus and make those backgrounds. So again, it comes back to being able to do that first step of making your own films by yourself. Very important. Keeping the budget in check. That's something you've asked about. How will you keep the budget in check? With simple maths, an understanding of the process, and by keeping everything well documented in a spreadsheet. Those are the 3 things you need to do to keep the budget in check, make sure it doesn't stray. So with the maths, the most you'll need is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Things you learn in nursery school. It doesn't get more complex than that. It really is just like, with the $10,000 example, you got to work out, a lot of the time you've got to work out time. Time is money, so you find out like how much you have to pay yourself per week or per month. So it's simple division, multiplication, addition, subtraction, and I can go into that in a more advanced video. In fact, I think that's going to be included in an upcoming course that I'm working on, which should be out next year. So stay tuned for that, where we go into all these business aspects, because I'm not trying to oversimplify this too much. I'm just trying to show you that it's possible, but it is a real job. It's like a full-time job being an animation producer. So it does have complexities, but I just want to let you know that it is very possible to start your own studio from scratch if you can make your own film by yourself first. From there, you can bring other people in. You can bring a freelancer in to do your backgrounds. Once you've done that, now you can start bringing in someone to do your in-betweens. Does that work? Okay, on the next commission, you bring someone in, and now you're going to take the daring step, someone doing keyframe animation. See, with each one, You're gently leaving the controls to someone else and paying them. You're taking a smaller cut for that, but it's worth it. And hopefully as well, here's the challenging part, you got to increase the quality of your animations that you're producing for clients, so that then the budget for your commissions can increase. Now, I don't want to get too far through these steps and go through too many steps, because I realize I've already spent a lot of time on this point. But basically from there, once you've got that, you've now set up a commercial studio where you have a network of freelancers and you produce you produce animations for other people's concepts, and now you want to shift over to producing your own. Well, because you have all the infrastructure set up from step 1, 2, 3, 4, now the transition is easier for you to create your own original concept. You know how to work with clients. You know how to work with a budget. You have an established network of freelancers. You yourself, as a leader, you understand every part of the pipeline. Okay, these are all essential things to having a studio which creates original content. The only difference with original content is that you need to have formed an original idea fully. You need to pitch it to an investor, of which there are many, although they are very specific about what they want. It needs to be on brand and things like that. It's tricky. So you pitch it to an investor and then they give you a budget. And so in a way, the investor is your client. Executive producer is another word for it. These are usually executive producers working for studios, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, all of them. Those are Western ones, but there are plenty out there. So yeah, I suggest you go through those steps first. And I understand that when you look up at a mountain like this, a big, scary mountain, it seems overwhelming. Like, I could never do all those things. But the journey up the mountain starts with a single step, and it's a sequence of steps after that. It's just putting one foot in front of the other and doing that again and again and again until before you know it, you're halfway up the mountain, and then you look down at your feet, you're walking, you look up again, and you've reached the summit, and you're there. I'm on that journey right now, and so I'm kind of reporting from, halfway up the mountain, and I'll let you know how the rest of it goes. But yeah, it's very possible. Don't think about it all at once and get overwhelmed by it. Just do the next thing in the sequence that you need to do, and do it well. Okay, on to his next point. He says, doesn't it upset you with what animators have to face? I guess it doesn't really upset me. Like, for one thing, I'm an animator and I don't feel sorry for myself. Although I think that animators have more choice over their situation than they realize. If you're a 2D animator, I'm speaking only to 2D animators in this podcast, by the way, it means you can draw. And if you can draw, then you have an extremely powerful skill set that a lot of people need and a lot of companies need. That's your negotiating leverage there. It's in your skill set as a draftsman, someone who can draw, someone who understands visuals very well and can manipulate visuals extremely effectively. That's your negotiating leverage. Remember that. Remember that that's valuable, like very valuable. I think artists forget that, and they see themselves as victims. They have power, and you need to use that smartly. I think you should understand critical thinking. You should understand being tactical and being empowered as well. I mean, let's say that you're trying to join a studio, or you're trying to work with a certain client and people are underbidding you. And that means that, like, let's say you quote the client, I don't know, 5k, and someone underbids you, quotes 3k, and then someone underbids them and quotes 2.5k. Before you know it, there's someone offering it for half the price that you were going to do it for. It might seem like you don't have a choice in that situation, and you have to bid lower than what you're worth to get the commission. But there's another option there, and you know this option, but you don't want to acknowledge it. And that's the option to not play. And that's why you'll never find me working on platforms like Fiverr, Upwork, Freelancer, Wooshie. Ugh, I hate all of them. I'd never go on them. I went through a phase of trying that because in the beginning, it took me a long time to learn this, by the way. In the beginning, I thought that's what you needed to do. But now I realize that you need to do the other option, and that's to not play that game, to not underbid. There's a really good... it's like you're not playing by their rules, you know. There's a great... an insurance company called Direct Line in the UK, and the idea behind Direct Line, this is what they advertise. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way, but it's just relevant to this because it transcends all business. But they basically, their advertisement message is that they are not on price comparison websites. They deliberately do not have anything on price comparison websites. So they are away from the competition. And that gives them a few benefits. For one thing, those price comparison websites take a commission on every insurance company that they recommend. Just like Odesk or Upwork, whatever it's called, Freelancer, Fiverr, they all take a commission. They take a cut whenever you do a commission. So if you operate outside of those systems, you take 100% of the commission. None of the, so that's good for the client as well, you know, because otherwise the client, part of what the client is paying for is not actually going to the artist, it's going to the platform on which the artist is on. So it's good for everyone when you do that. And the other thing is, you don't want to be around other people who are offering similar services, because that's like trying to get attention in a room full of advertisements for other related services. Like, how likely is it that they're gonna choose you among all of those other options? You need to separate yourself. On my website, you won't see any banners for other art services that provided by other people. It's just my work there. And that's the great thing about my website, is that it's just me. There's no one else around that you can see, no other artist. So when the client goes on there, you know, my work is presented in its best light. Okay, so kind of went off on one there, but the main thing about that is that, you know, artists don't have to face some of these challenges. Some of them they just need to dodge. Like, it's not even worth attempting to make a sustainable business on Fiverr.com. It's not even worth trying. It's a better use of your time to avoid it completely and to set up business in areas that do work and that you can tell that they work. They're known to work. So next point he makes, and sure, it's not all about the money, but to be able to function in this society and make your ideas happen is only done by money. So, okay, I kind of think that this is, maybe I didn't read that point in the correct tone, because I think he's complaining in this point, really I do. But that's a fact, you know. Yes, we live in a capitalist economy So that's how the system runs, I'm afraid. So I know that it's not what a lot of you want to hear, but I believe you should take a section of your time and devote it to learning about supplementary skills which aren't animation, but that are going to help you so much in your career as an animator. So this is things like social media marketing, finance, economics, investment. Okay, maybe these things don't appeal to you very much, but by learning about these, you're really investing in yourself and you're investing in your future prosperity. So here's what I found are the main reasons for artists struggling financially. And it might not be what you think it is, because I think what maybe people assume that I would say here is things like, YouTube changing their algorithm. No, it's not. Here are the 3 reasons. And notice that they're all the artist's responsibility, okay? Number 1, artists are not trained in financial literacy. Number 2, artists lack imagination with business strategies. And number 3, quality animation takes a lot of time to produce. Okay, fair enough. Number 3 is not the animator's fault. Fine. But I'm going to follow up on these points individually and you'll see what I have to say. Artists are not trained in financial literacy. Neither was I. I wasn't trained in financial literacy. I had to teach myself financial literacy. So luckily there are plenty of books out there that you can buy. They don't cost a lot, and you can learn from it. And not only that, you don't even need to buy a book. You just need to pay attention to what's happening on the internet. Every site you go on to, figure out how it's making money. Like if you go onto a blog and you're trying to learn about a certain animation technique, think, okay, how's this website making its income? Right, look, they're running Google banner ads. Okay, anyone can sign up to that. Right, there's a strategy. I've learned something now. Or maybe they are trying to upsell you to buy their products. How do they set that product up? I wonder what platform they use. They're using WordPress? Okay, you see, you don't actually need a book. You can actually figure it out yourself if you're aware. Okay, on to the next point. Artists lack imagination with business strategies. I just want to point out how ironic this is, that artists, who are some of the most imaginative personalities, imaginative people, just don't seem to bring that imagination to their business strategies. So I recommend that you do more research on business. You need to put the time in here. Take some time out. If you're devoting 100% of your time to making animations or making drawings, take a section of that time. Don't stop drawing, but take a section of that time and use that time as dedicated time to figuring out how to run a business. You can reverse engineer business strategies. You can be an entrepreneur. And what entrepreneurs do is they look for demand. They see where people are struggling and they try to help people and cater something to their needs. And also, there are 2 kind of businesses you can be involved in. You can either be involved in products or services. So I think most animators are only exploring services, really. The service industry, which is like, and I'm involved in services. It's services is like selling a service to someone else. So for example, animating something for a client. That's what I do a lot. But now have a look at the products industry and you might be surprised at what you find. For example, by selling stock footage and stock images, you can actually sell the same thing hundreds of times. And so that's very good leverage on your time, if you think about it. I think that a lot of stock websites, Shutterstock, Envato Market, Shutterstock, did I say Shutterstock? Maybe I did. Getty Images, I don't know. They want assets, animated assets or just graphics, vector images that lots of businesses can use, and they can buy the license. That's an example of a product industry that you can access. You can sell products, not just services, and plenty of other things, but that's just a clue for you, another clue for you to go off and figure out. Number 3, quality animation takes a lot of time to produce. This is a big thing, a big issue that people have, and I'm going to tackle it more in later videos, in articles and podcasts. So because it's a big problem, and if we solved this problem, we would kind of solve every problem. Like, it's the problem of animators. So quality animation takes time to produce. I think most animators aren't as efficient as they could be with the way they produce their animation. I'm talking about making your animation count, making your animation serve multiple purposes, reusing your old animations. I feel like people animate something for one purpose only, and so they're not really getting the most out of that animation. If you put 10 hours into a little looping clip of animation, that's 10 hours you've spent there. Okay, so how can you make that animation count for as much as possible? How can you make a social media post about it? How can you then also make a YouTube video about it? How can you then also put it into your portfolio for your gallery on your website? Can you also make it a sponsored video if you're doing a YouTube video about it? In the first place, could you have had that commissioned by a client? Can you agree in the contract with that client that you're also allowed to use it for your own social media? That's what I do. So you see, you're doing a lot with one piece of animation, and that's how you got to be. You got to be shrewd with it. And so those are some starting points for how you can change this problem of lacking financial literacy. Oh yeah, by the way, with financial literacy, I recommend the book to get you started on learning about financial literacy. There's a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's a very tiny book, but it's very simple and easy to read, and it's just a good introduction to learning financial literacy. So I'll link that in the description. And I want to say that making money can be really fun. And I don't mean having money, I don't mean spending money, I mean making money in itself is very fun and interesting and satisfying. If you've ever watched like The Apprentice or something, it's very fun that they go off and they create a business venture. So think of it that way. Don't think of it as a chore where it's like, oh, now I've got to earn money to fund my hobby of animation, making animations. Now I've got to figure out a way to make this work financially. See it as, a fun thing in itself, I'd say. And even if you're working in a studio, you can work tactically and figure out ways of getting more leverage in negotiation. Maybe you can negotiate to have more flexible working hours. Maybe you can negotiate a raise. Maybe you can find a way to change the course of the entire studio. You could actually help the studio to develop by offering suggestions and things, and become a real stakeholder in the studio that you're working at. Just some ideas there. It doesn't only apply to freelance animators. It applies to pretty much anyone who's an artist, who's working in a creative profession, really. So the conclusion of this, long story short, roll up your sleeves and put in dedicated work to make something which benefits other people. As a consequence, opportunities will present themselves for money and success and all other things that you want. Invest in your skill sets and you will be rewarded. Make good films and you will be rewarded. it's a byproduct of the hard work. If you work hard and you work smart, you'll get money as a consequence. It will happen to you. Like if I do a good job on this podcast, people will be compelled. I'm confident that people will be compelled to give back. So it's just gonna happen. You know, I think. Hopefully, guys, be generous. You can show your thanks by supporting me on Patreon. The link to my Patreon page will be in the description. And I also think, don't make a habit of complaining about your circumstances. Try to see the bigger picture. Adapt to what is happening around you, but be true to yourself and your passion. You can also leave a like, comment, share, review, any of those things to help this show, to help my channel, to help it get to more people so more people can see it. And also remember that the podcast is now up on Spotify and SoundCloud and will soon be coming to other platforms. Okay, that's it. Goodbye.